Just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Only just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up just like the sunrise. We gonna light it up now. Just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no.
Hello, HVAC guide for, let's see, HVAC guide for homeowners live show coming at you, answering HVAC questions. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Looks like our numbers are still pretty low right now, but let me know you're here in the chat. And looks like Steve here. Steve, can you hear me okay? Just want to make sure everybody can hear me okay. But answering HVAC questions live. Okay, good. And if I don't know the answer, it looks like we've got some other pros on here as well. So I do need to make one change. Let me know if that helped with the audio. Does that sound better at all? I just made one quick change. And then once I make sure our audio is good, we'll get started. Does that sound okay? Testing. Emery says I can hear you. Let me know if there is an audio issue. I made one quick change, so hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Wanted to start out tonight's show with a interesting story. It's not that profound, but I just thought it was kind of interesting just because it's, everybody needs heating and air, right? And that includes the local jail. And this story comes out of, let's see, where is this out of? Looks like Indiana. After nearly a decade of delays due to lack of funds, the $2 million upgrade of the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system at Bartholomew County Sheriff's Department should be completed by the end of this week. Most of the extensive new system went online earlier this month throughout the jail, according to reports provided to county officials. The entire building takes up an entire city block bordered by Franklin Street, 2nd Street, Lafayette Avenue, and 1st Street. Again, if you guys, let me know how it sounds, the audio. Jail and construction personnel recently completed a final walkthrough to inspect expansive HVAC system. Project consultant Charlie Day of DLZ Indiana said, from that walkthrough, the Department of Contractors came up with a list of smaller and last-minute items that still needed to be addressed. Day said, quote, "It's probably been up to 8 years that we knew we had HVAC work that needed to be done at the jail," County Commissioner Larry Kleinhens said. We just didn't have the funding, so we kept delaying it and delaying it. Well, who doesn't do that, right? I've got some customers that do that. But the financial problem was resolved when money became available from over $16 million in federal funds allocated to Bartholomew County government through the American Rescue Plan. Beside creating a more comfortable climate, the HVAC system upgrade will result in energy savings and lower maintenance costs in the future, the commissioner said. The work forced a number of technicians to crawl up under air ducts and ventilation shafts, including those located in jail cells, Sheriff's Department Captain T.A. Smith said. So that's definitely interesting. I know, Steve, you do heat and air. When I do heating and air, I've never been under a jail cell before. That would be a new one. Such work in a jail requires crews to take extra steps to secure all work areas before they leave work for the night, Smith said. Yeah, you wouldn't even want to leave one little tool out, right? That could be, something that someone in the jail get a hold of, right? It was a lesson the county learned the hard way. When the jail was expanding in 2002, one inmate was successful in escaping by removing an third-story window that was not secured and slid down bed sheets that has been tied together. Some of the wording on this. News accounts state. Another inmate tried to make a similar escape later that same year, but both were quickly apprehended and taken back into custody, according to stories. Hold on one second, guys. I just want to hear how I sound. Okay, perfect. Quote, it's challenging when you have 280 people in jail that don't want to be there and are trying to anyway to sneak out, Bartholomew County Commissioner Larry Kleinhen said. I'm sure that is. However, no such attempted escapes took place during this year's project, Smith said. He credited good planning and wise measures that were taken before construction began. I remember years ago, I was working for an electric company, and we worked in a hospital, and I remember some of the precautions we had to take. So I could only imagine, what it's like for these guys, constantly having to make sure that, you do everything you need to do and are supposed to do to make sure these guys don't get out, right? Since the new HVAC system has multiple internet controls, the county had to purchase control software that will allow local officials to operate the system manually if the internet goes down, Bartholomew. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I think the moral of the story and the reason I found this interesting is, they had to put this heating and air system in a jail, and I'm sure that adds yet another wrinkle to all of this. There's always a wrinkle, right? You're putting in a system, and they've got with us, we do mostly residential. So, if the customer has a dog, or if, the customer won't be home or whatever, there's always some sort of little wrinkle here and there. I can only imagine doing, putting a system in a jail or even a prison, the precautions and the wrinkles, if you will, that you have to worry about. So yeah, how's everybody doing tonight? Share, if you have any heating and air questions, drop those in the chat. I've got overall, we got a pretty good show tonight. I've got a few extra, some of the segments that we do, some of the extra things that we do. And I've got a new one for you guys tonight that I thought would be fun. And it's going to be called Crazy Clips. Some of the crazy clips that I come across. And so we're going to be doing that from time to time. But we've already said hello to Steve and Emery. Looks like Arch just jumped in. Loud and clear here. Good. So yeah, and so what I'm trying to do is make it a little more entertaining, a little more than just me sitting here reading your comments constantly. I definitely want to answer questions if you have heating and air questions. But aside from that, some extra things, some extra segments, if you will, that we do when we do our show every week. Arch says, I read that in Texas, they don't have AC in prisons. That's interesting. You would think of all places, that, that's where they would have them. Maybe that's true for, some of the prisons. I would be really surprised if that's all prisons in Texas. I'm just gonna Google that real quick. Texas prisons, no AC. Interesting. More than 2/3 of Texas 100 prisons don't have air conditioning, and most living areas inside the concrete and steel buildings where officers and prisoners work and live. Woo! So not only are you trapped in a cage, everybody smells like a foot. Everybody is sweating, you know. There's parts of Texas, man. I mean, I've never even been down in like what they call the valley and some of those areas, and some of the temperatures that those guys see. But I've been to Houston several times, and I can only imagine. I mean, I was in Houston last July, as some of you know, and I'm wanting to say that it was well over 100 there. I mean, it was like, I think one of the days we were there, it was like 112 degrees. And then after heat index and all that fun stuff, it was even higher than that. So I can only imagine, man. That would be crazy. Heat is considered a necessity. Cooling is not. I would agree with that to an extent. But I think that, you know, if there was anywhere that cooling should be a necessity, you know, as the further south you get, and you know, some of those temperatures, it's one thing to say, well, you know, we're gonna put these guys in prison, but you know, it's another thing to say, you know, they're you could be putting people, literally their health at risk, right? Arch says, we lived in Texas and it's very hot and humid. What part of Texas did you live, Arch? Texas is so big. I was watching a documentary the other day about the history, or some history, and you know, how the annexation and all that fun stuff. But Texas is I guess it's the largest state here in the continental U.S., right? It's not as big as Alaska, but I bet to just get in a car and drive from one side to the other, I mean, I'm sure it would probably take a day. I don't know exactly how long it would take, but it's a big state. TJ says, yes, it gets hot here in Texas. So TJ's down there in Texas, and he says it's hot. Arch says San Antonio. Got it. Yep. So I can say that Houston is very hot and humid as well, right? Emery says, what are the current efficiency standards for HVAC products right now? It depends on where you live. So I don't want to speak and be wrong. But I do know we have a video that either just came out or it's coming up, where we're talking about some of the AFU ratings and some of the changes and some of the lawmakers that are pushing certain things as far as that goes. But right now, as far as I know, you can still get inefficient furnaces as well. And, you know, when I say inefficient, I mean 80% AFU gas furnaces and so on. But as far as the SEER ratings on heating and air systems, here in Virginia, the lowest system you can buy if it's a heat pump is 14.3. I think package units are a little lower than that, and straight AC might be a little lower than that too. But I don't sell a straight ACs, and I don't sell a whole lot of package units. I think they're 13.4, but you know, when I started in this trade, I think we were installing systems that were like 10 SEER. I remember when they first started coming out and putting SEER ratings on them, you know, 12 SEER was really good back then. 12, 13 SEER, you know, and then it got to where 13 was basically the minimum just a few years ago. And then, of course, now we've got SEER 2 ratings and all that fun stuff. Arch says Texas was a county or a country before a state. That's why there's very little public land. Gotcha. Interesting. And I think it's the only state that was a country per se before it was a state. I think that's a little trivia that I've heard before, but you know, I think that's kind of all in context. You know, I'm sure that the Native Americans could probably disagree with that, right? All right, let's go ahead and do our new segment. As some of you know, we do a segment every week, different segments, and this week's segment that our new segment is called Crazy Clips. And so our first crazy clip that I wanted to show you guys, let's see if I can get this up for y'all. Here we go. All right, let me back this up. And I think the sound is on for it. But this is a crazy clip in one of the groups, one of the Facebook groups that I'm in, and I came across this clip. I thought it was interesting. Check this out. Hopefully you guys can see that. Let me know if you can.
Hampton Oaks area near the C.E. King area. Be on the lookout. East side. Please be on the lookout for these bandits. These bandits are on the loose, and they're attempting to uninstall a recently installed air conditioning unit.
The refrigerant being
sad,
released.
sad. The good thing is that they weren't able to get away with it, as you guys will see here shortly. They couldn't fit it or load it into this loser cruiser of theirs. Just horrible. This cost the owner thousands of dollars to fix after all the damages they caused. Oh, no. Hey, get out of there. Some criminals lack the basic common sense.
Crazy.
Look at this, folks.
I don't think these guys are very
Oh, Lord. I mean, dang, y'all showed up to the show unprepared.
How can we put
truck,
this unit that's
like
almost as big
small
as our
trunk
car in the car?
Do they really think that they're able to load this in the back seat of that car, the loser cruiser? Oh, Lord. There's the license plate. Somebody's going to recognize these folks. All sources are kept anonymous. And, you know, we won't tell who you are. I mean, just get your snacks ready and hit me up in Messenger. And let me do what I need to do. I'm going to do a come on down video. We can do a 3 for 3. We can do a 2-piece, or we can just do a 1-piece special. It's up to you, depending on how much info you know. If we can get all 3 identified, that would be ideal.
They're going to try something different.
And he's still going to try all. Oh, no. In broad daylight. This is just crazy, y'all. This happened in broad daylight. Like, she pulled into the side of the yard in the car. And they're really trying to do this. I'm glad they weren't able to.
Oh, we're gonna try the.
Somebody's gonna recognize that dude with the black shirt. He's gonna be easy to recognize.
The trunk again.
He lives by the motto: "Chances make champs." Like, they're really trying, y'all. This is crazy.
Jesus.
They're like. I'm just going to say this. Eastside bandits are a whole different breed, man. They don't give up. Please be on the lookout, Eastside peeps. All tips are anonymous. Come on down in progress. Let's go.
Yeah, that was it. That was pretty good. What'd you guys think? My whole thing with that whole clip is what possessed them to think they were going to get that thing in the car? Emery wants to know, is it illegal for them to release the refrigerant into the atmosphere? Well, yes, there was a lot of illegal things in that video. Steve says it doesn't seem to matter. So yeah, that was let me know what you think of our new segment. Josh's Crazy Clips is what I'm calling that segment. Let me know what you think of that segment. Arch says our minimum SEER rating is going to change at the start of the new year. I'm not aware of any new changes in the near future, but I would not be surprised if that changes. So in other words, you know, as far as 2024 goes, I'm not aware of any changes, but I would not be surprised if we hear sometime in, you know, say 2025 that, you know, we'll see changes again, 2026 per se. Let me see. I'm just trying to make sure I don't miss anybody. Emery says, how come our residential package systems in your area? I'm not sure what you're asking, Emery. If you could maybe reword that differently. If you're asking, are there residential package systems? There are. But in my area, unlike where Arch lives, they don't put them on the roof. They put them on the ground. How common are residential package systems in your area? I would say maybe 15% of the systems that we work on are package units. The majority of them are some sort of split system, but on any given day, we might, if we go on 7 service calls, one or two of them could be a package unit, so I would say 15 to 25% of them. I don't know the exact number. I'm just throwing numbers out there. But that's I live in the coast of Virginia. So it's very different, I'm sure that those percentages are quite different, for a lot of you folks out west. Prom at this hour. We have a church that had its AC unit stolen 3 times. Whoa. I don't know where that church is, Steve, but by gosh, they need to put some of the, Ryan said it. That's why some areas use cages. Where I live at, Newport News, a lot of the units, I don't live in Newport News. I live about an hour from Newport News, Virginia. And, there are neighborhoods in Newport News where they put cages on the systems. And for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, because you may not, let me see if I can, here we go. So there are some cities where this is a common thing that you see. You see these different types of cages, literally meant to stop people from stealing the heating and air systems. And some of these cages are I would say they're not the most secure things in the world, but maybe just the look of having a cage on it might inhibit some of these folks from trying to steal the heating and air system. I think generally most of them are stolen so they can scrap the metal and get cash for that, but maybe it's not out of the realm of possibility that somebody is stealing it to actually, sell and install it somewhere, maybe. I mean, who knows? But, there are areas where, cages are used a lot, What do AC thieves even do with the copper fittings inside the units? Yeah, they just break them down and scrap them. When I first started, my company, you could break down a unit and, you could probably get $50 to $80 for an entire heating and air system broken down. I would say now it's probably a little higher than that, but not much higher. It was actually really high when I started and it dipped down and then it came back up. But I don't think it's, I'm not saying, I don't think you're going to make like thousands of dollars or anything like that. Steve says units are almost inaccessible now. Added cages after stolen. Dead aim. Hola. Anything new from Daikin for the hot, humid South? Welcome to the show. I don't have anything to report right this second, but I am hoping that is going to change as we get closer and closer to January, February, because as we start to get closer to January of 2025, and 410A goes away, I have a feeling that 2024 is going to be a very busy year for our YouTube channel here, of rolling out all the new stuff, all the new changes. And, every week I'm sure there's going to be some news popping, at least every month for sure, Arch says that reminds me of some gypsies trying to rip off electric copper cable right next to a major street in Valencia, Spain. I've seen houses near where we live where the house is vacant and they go in and steal all the copper water lines. They cut open the walls just to steal the copper out of the walls, believe it or not. They welded these cages to the curbs. Got it. So yeah, let me know what you guys think of my new segment. Did you like, the crazy clips? Is that something that I should hang on to? Should I do those more often? I've got more clips coming, and just let me know what you think. Emery says, what kind of compressors in the Daikin fit? Daikin has something called the swing compressor. It's very similar to a scroll compressor, but I don't want to get too technical, but basically what they've did is they made it to where there's less parts doing the same motion, and it's meant to have less of, as time goes on and metal touches metal and things are moving, things can start to wear and break down. And the idea is there's less parts to break down, so where there are parts in there that might be two pieces, they've made it into one piece. And I've heard some of their statistics on the failure rates on them, and they're like less than 1%. They're like 0.001% or something like that in the factory. So it's pretty good, pretty good unit there. I've had copper stolen from residential rough-in installs. Really? Man, that is crazy. How about some installation clips? Okay. Yeah. Well, we'll be doing all kinds of different clips, coming up. So yeah, HVAC and electric. Wow. Excuse me. I'm lucky that I live in an area where I don't see a lot of that sort of stuff, but I've heard horror stories, and you always hear things, right? Guys stealing things and stuff like that. Pretty crazy. Again, if you have any heating and air questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. In the meantime, we will move on to our next segment for the night. And tonight's next segment is my question for you. So tonight's question for you, let's see. I think I've asked that question before, so I'm looking at the next couple to see if there's a better one, but I'm pretty sure I've asked this question before. Here we go. I think this is a good one. So, what is your favorite feature on your thermostat? Is there a feature on your thermostat that you love, that you almost feel like you couldn't do without, or at least you like it a lot? A feature that maybe you didn't have it on a thermostat before and you like it about this one. Or if the answer is no, is there a feature on another thermostat out there that you don't currently have that you can't wait to get? Let me know what that is in the comment section. If you've got a favorite feature or setting or, some sort of capability on your thermostat that you love and you just feel like you can't do without. Love to hear about that. Arch says, I've seen metal cages made that are mounted on top of rooftop units. Wow. That's some heavy duty security. If somebody is motivated enough to go on top of the roof and steal a heating and air system, that's some what's the word I'm looking for? You got to have some guts, some stupidity, some guts, and that's a commitment is what that is. You are really committed to get that unit if you're going to be going on somebody's roof and, having to steal that unit off the roof. That is crazy. At least I assume that's what you're saying, Arch. You're saying that they put the cages on the units even if they're on the roof. That's nuts. Steve says, I have a Honeywell Wi-Fi thermostat. I'm changing the temp from my couch. I have the same. I have a Honeywell 8000 and I think they're great. I can't wait to try. I have not tried it yet. I have one. I just have not tried it. But Amazon came out with their own thermostat. I don't know if you guys have seen those. I thought I had one in here, but I don't see it right now. But Amazon came out with a thermostat what was it, last year or the year before? And they did it with Honeywell. You can tell because they have that same base plate that the Honeywell T series has. And I've been wanting to try that. Amazon. This guy right here. And it's not a bad looking thermostat, but if you look at the back of them, they have the same base plate, and here it is, made with Honeywell Home, so that's why. But they have the same base plate that those T series units have, where you just, you plug your wires in, and then you pop the thermostat on that base plate. But they're also they're Alexa capable, so I assume you use the Alexa app, and which I think I did a video on that a while back when they first came out, and I think that's the case. But whether I'm right or wrong, I've been wanting to try them because you see the price; they're not too bad of a price compared to some of the other Wi-Fi thermostats out there, and it's not a bad looking thermostat either. But I don't know when I'm going to do that, because we're going to be putting in a Daikin fit at some point in our upstairs. So that means I'll have a Daikin one up there. But yeah. Arch says they're ripping out the copper parts and wiring. Oh, okay. These were at commercial unit buildings. So maybe they weren't stealing the entire unit. They were just stealing some of the expensive parts that they could, recycle there. Erica, welcome to the show. What would be a way to troubleshoot the heating element on the HVAC? Our heat is not working. Heating element. I'm not sure. Sometimes maybe you're using verbiage that I don't use, or vice versa. So I'm not sure what you're saying as far as heating element. If you're saying heat strips, if you're talking about the backup heat strips that are paired with heat pump systems, there's a number of things that could go wrong with those. But some of the things you might be able to do yourself and address yourself is, if the thermostat's not sending voltage up there, something as simple as low batteries might stop that system from sending voltage on that white wire or that W wire up to the heat strips. But anything short of that, you probably should get a pro in there. You're going to want somebody that can get in there and diagnose. Heat kits, a lot of times, if one of the components fails, the entire heat kit itself might be covered under warranty. But if it's not under warranty, replacing one of those, one of those components isn't that big a deal typically. In fact, I would say heat kits, there's really not much to them. But if you're, when you say heating element, if you're talking about the heat strip itself, so if you've got whether it's a relay or sequencer, whatever controls that strip and it sends voltage over to it, the way I would actually troubleshoot or diagnose to see if that heat strip itself, not the parts that control it, but the heat strip itself, is I would just test the resistance of it and just see make sure that, it's not open or an open leg or something like that. Steve says, need a good electrical meter. Are the heating elements drawing current? So yeah, sounds like when y'all say heating elements, maybe that's the verbiage Steve uses. Here in Virginia, we call them heat strips, but probably the same thing. And that's another good way that, I would say that it's probably pretty safe to say, even if you put your amp clamp on there, when Steve says, is it drawing current? If you put your amp clamp on those wires, if you're not feeling heat, I would say it's pretty safe to say that it's not, there is no drawing amperage on those. you would feel warm heat if they were. But anything short of that, I will say we're not a DIY channel. I do a lot of videos on different things to avoid and tips and tricks in the heating and air system, but I don't really teach people how to work on heating and air systems. It would be quite a weight on me if I were to try to teach someone to do something DIY and they were to get hurt or something worse. So Francisco is asking a very good question. Do you have a furnace or air handler? That'll tell you a lot right there. So, anyway, so back to our question I asked you guys, what is your favorite feature on your thermostat? I will say my favorite feature on my thermostat, at least on my 8000, is the fact that I can control the heat droop and the backup heat stage timer. That is probably my favorite feature. There's a lot of things. In fact, the Honeywell 8000 to date has always been my favorite thermostat for a number of reasons. But that's probably my favorite setting or feature in there, because, you know, to me, unlike some of the other pie in the sky settings out there, geofencing and scheduling and all these different, because I've heard it argued both ways. I'd say it's pretty hard to argue that, you know, setting the heat droop and backup heat stage timer isn't going to save you energy in some way. You know, you're going to give that heat pump system a chance in some way to reach temperature before it brings on that backup heat. You know, that's, sorry, I'm just reading some of the comments. And so that's probably my favorite feature as far as the Honeywell 8000 goes. Erica says, I'm not sure. I was trying to speak any language that sounded right. We rewired a new thermostat earlier this year. We might have wired it wrong. Ooh. Or you may have wired it correctly, but maybe you didn't program it correctly. You know, it could be just a simple setting in that thermostat, and you know, you're not being able to get voltage sent to the backup heat. I just realized we're still on that Amazon thermostat on our screen here. So it could be the wiring, but it could also just be as simple as, you know, making sure the settings are set up correctly for your type of system. We have an air handler, she says. So, yeah, I tell you, there are a lot of heating and air guys on YouTube doing DIY type videos, or even if they don't expect their content to be DIY, there are still homeowners that watch that stuff and try to do their own thing, and that's fine. If you are capable of that, I'm not one of those guys that, you know, fights you on that. A lot of folks will comment on our videos and say, oh, it's money out of your pocket. If you're not my coverage area, it's not money out of my pocket. Okay. So I could care less. I've just always been concerned that, you know, if you don't know what you're doing, it kind of gets back into folks that work on microwaves. If you got a microwave and you don't know what you're doing and that magnetron / capacitor gets you, I've heard of people literally dying just trying to fix a microwave. And I just, you know, I can't get on board with that. It's a concern. It's not just a concern of homeowners doing DIY. It's a concern even with technicians. When you have somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, if you've got a young, you know, I say young rhetorically, but it could be an older person too, an inexperienced technician starting to do some of the things that some of these guys do when they're really not ready yet, the safety issues that are involved with that. And, you know, you might say, Josh, you're just, you know, you're being pessimistic, or you're doom and gloom because it's taking money out of your pocket again. No, Google it. Just Google refrigerant burns, you know, and I'm not going to do it here because YouTube will probably jerk my content down for showing graphic pictures. But if you just Google refrigerant burns and some of the pictures of people's hands and things like that when they tried to do certain things with refrigerant and ended up, you know, getting pretty badly hurt, you know. and never mind the electrical components. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now. It's just a big concern, man. I mean, I that's literally the reason why I don't do that stuff. I don't do DIY stuff, because it would weigh on me big time if something were to happen to somebody. Steve says thermostat settings are important, may not be set up correctly. Very true. Jamie, welcome to the show. I have an Ecobee, and my favorite feature is that it senses when I'm not home and lowers the temp to away mode. Jamie, have you ever had that malfunction, in that it senses when you're home, but is it using geofencing through your phone? So maybe you're not home, but someone else is, and that Ecobee's not adjusting accordingly. You know, I've heard that complaint before, maybe not about Ecobee specifically, but just about thermostats in general. And so whoever is home has to go over there and manually, get that thermostat, get that system running, because the person that controls it is not there. Erica says, thank you again. Sorry for interrupting your live. You're not interrupting. That's what we're here for. I was looking for videos and saw you on live and thought to ask. Nice. Well, we appreciate it. Arch says, I don't plan on doing any DIY, but would like to learn more about HVAC in order to ask the right questions and know that the installation is being done right. That's where I'm at. That was my call to action from the very get-go when I first started doing videos. My first few videos were almost like me doing little commercials for my heating and air company. And, I'd start getting questions and people saying, hey, what about this? What about that? And it led me to start trying to help folks, and that's how it all got started. So that way folks can ask the right questions and know what if the installation is being done right. So, and I think that's the whole goal here, right? To know if you're being taken advantage of, right? I mean, wouldn't it be great if all homeowners had enough know-how to at least know that? It's sort of like those cars when you take your car to the mechanic and, you're just trying to get an oil change, but while you're there, they say, hey, while we were doing your oil change, we noticed these 10 other things that are wrong with your car. And of course, any normal person is going to say, well, if it's wrong, I need it to be right. Right. But there's always that part in the back of your mind of, is this genuine? Are these things actually wrong, or are they just pulling one over on me? And, heating and air, I would say falls in that same category, cause there are some bad apples out there. So, man, I've been going down some tangents tonight. Going down some rabbit holes. But that's the world we live in, right? Let's go back to our breakaway segments from the chat. And again, while we're going to our next segment, if you have a heating and air question, feel free to drop it in there. But let's go back to another news story I thought would be interesting to show you guys. And so here's another news for the day. Okay, our next news article that I thought would be good for our show tonight, and it's a pretty sad one, but I thought, I'd share this in memory of this fella. This story comes out of Pennsylvania, and this is a story about an HVAC tech named Travis Michael. And it says, Travis Michael of West Wyoming, an entrepreneur and beloved son, brother, and friend, died on Saturday, September 16th. Loved ones said in his excuse me. Loved ones said in his obituary he was only 35. So sad. Way too young. This is Travis right here. And let me try to get these ads off of here. Born in Abilene, Texas, to Larry, Michael, and Sabrina Pasco, Michael grew up attending Milton, Pennsylvania schools and later continued his studies at the Fortis Institute. According to his obituary, he received his HVAC certification and went on to launch his own contracting business, Air Motion Performance. Relatives wrote, a hard worker with charisma and compassion for others, Michael enjoyed spending his free time working on scooters and four-wheelers and making trips to Las Vegas, loved ones said. Quote, Travis left his mark on this world by using his strength and motivation to always do better and help others, and will now rest easy with no more suffering or pain, family members wrote. Friends look to social media to pen tributes in his memory. So here's some posts about Travis, and here's a picture of him working on a boiler. In addition to his parents, Michael is survived by his 2 stepfathers. It goes on with some other family and so on. So, pretty tough story there. It doesn't say how he passed, but, obviously way too young. Looks like he was in the HVAC industry and had worked his way up to starting his own business and, had plenty of life ahead of him. So, pretty sad there. And, our thoughts and prayers are with his family for sure. But let me know what you think in the chat. I think that's definitely way too young, no doubt about that. So here's another picture of him working on a boiler. So it looks like he was quite a boiler guy there, but here's another picture of him working on a mini split. I don't know, maybe that's a couple of his guys right there. There he is doing some heating and air. Big old pipe wrench. And there he is looks like those are boilers as well. So he must have done a lot of work with boilers. There's an air handler. And yeah. Oh, you guys can't even see what I'm looking at. Sorry, guys. Let me go back through these pictures. There he is with the boiler. And some more boilers on pallets. I didn't realize you guys couldn't see what I was seeing. And there's the one with him with an air handler. And then finally back with a boiler. And there's the one with him at a mini split. So anyway, definitely way too young. And rest easy. Back to our chat. Doesn't look like we've got any new comments. So yeah, pretty slow night to be honest with you. It looks like we've got 15 folks on here with us. But it is right after the holiday. I'll be interested to see how the numbers go as we get closer and closer to Christmas. But it is also the cold time of year, so maybe it's just an off week for us. But yeah, so we're probably going to wrap up here shortly. As we do wrap up tonight, if you know a good heating and air company out there across the nation, feel free to drop their name in the chat. Even if you see this in the future, show them some love, but also, your comment of that company and where they're located. So feel free to drop that in the chat as we wrap up our show tonight. As we wrap up, I'm going to... Let's see. Arch says, any thoughts on heat pump water heaters? Well, I think some of the heat pump water heaters are, I don't know if they've come down in price or when they first came out, the jump in price was so significant, right? They to go from just a standard standard water heater up to a heat pump water heater was quite a hike. Whereas now some of them are, it's not that much more and they are much more efficient. What I will caution you against is if you have any sort of circulating pump where you have instant hot water in your house. I know that the heat pump water heaters do have issues with those sorts of setups. So, anyway, other than that, they're, they dehumidify when they're working. They are very efficient. And I've even heard of some people saving so much on their electric bill after installing one that they paid for themselves within the first year or two. So that the extra cost after 2 years, you're you're saving so much, just switching to a heat pump water heater. I'll tell you this, in my house, when I've got plenty of life left in my water heater because we just put it in, I don't know, 5 years ago. But when it does fail again, we will be probably switching to a heat pump water heater because I don't have any sort of circulation or any of that. Ryan says, what is the cost of a 4-ton Daikin fit before the install? Just the equipment. Just interested to see what the real cost is for a professional to install. I don't even know the answer to that right off the top of my head, Ryan. But I mean, I would probably say less than $5,000. I don't know that right off the top of my head without, I'd have to go logging into our system and all that fun stuff. But, the heat pump is, I'm just guessing, but just throwing numbers out there, but you're probably looking at a couple grand for the heat pump and then another couple grand for the air handler. So I would say probably pushing $5,000. If I had to guess. Art says, I've read that they need more room for installation. I'm sure that they need airflow. I'll be honest with you. We've installed several at Griffin Air, but I don't know that we've installed enough for me to say definitively, something about that. I have not heard that, but my guys may say differently. They may say, Josh, we read the instructions and we saw this and that. So, I'm not sure on that, pal. Ryan says, I don't understand why the manufacturers don't put the suggested retail price for their HVAC products minus the install price. Well, some do, Ryan. Some you can go online and buy their equipment, right? But some systems they're sold wholesale and they only sell to their own dealers. So that's kind of their prerogatives. Gary says, good evening, Josh and friends. Better late than never. Just got back from dinner out with my neighbor. Nice. I'm going to live vicariously through you for a moment, Gary, and ask you, what did you have for dinner? My wife made a Mississippi pot roast. If you never had that, look it up. Just Google it. It is so much better than just regular traditional pot roast. It's so good. And you don't get this figure right here without eating good food. So look that up. You will thank me. Ryan says, any other industries, I can see the price of stuff, but HVAC is very secretive. Yeah, I think it's just, it kind of gets to the, I would equate it to, now, again, we can agree to disagree whether you think it's right or wrong or anything like that. But I might actually be on your side on a few of these things. But it kind of, I would say when you go to a car dealership, obviously you're trying to get the best price you can, but the car dealership may not be as forthright and honest with what they paid for that car, if that makes sense. And, maybe that would be a good analogy for that. But I think the other thing with a lot of companies is, I did a YouTube video on this one time, and I think the video was called something like, you don't actually want your heating and air company to be honest, and you might say, well, yes, I do. And I would say, no, you don't. And what I mean by that is, if you had someone that was just blatantly honest and said, hey, I pay this much for my equipment. I pay this much for the materials to install that equipment. I pay this much for labor, and the rest is profit. God forbid I get a little profit. If they were honest, that a lot of homeowners would be like, well, I think that price is ridiculous. I'm going to call the next guy. And so I think that's why you see a lot of companies come out with these fancy sales tactics, right or wrong. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that, a lot of homeowners don't want the guys to be completely honest about that stuff. I'm just being real. I mean, Ryan says, thank you for being honest and candid about the price. I mean, I just think that, there are homeowners that don't actually want that brutal honesty. I'll tell you this, at my company, I'm very fortunate to live in and work in an area where, a lot of folks will retire to this area, or they have a second home in this area. I live on the coast of Virginia. And because of that, I can be a little more brutally honest about our pricing sometimes. And with us, I just tell the customer right up, here's our hourly rate, and here's our service call fee for us to come out. And they'll say to me, well, does that, if I get the work done, will you waive the service call? And I say, nope. That's a sales tactic that a lot of flat rate pricing companies use, and they're not actually waiving anything. They're just building it into So my point in saying all this is I'm just brutally honest, and some folks don't like that, and that's how I came to that realization that, a lot of homeowners, they actually don't want you to be completely honest all the time. I'm just fortunate enough that we stay really busy regardless. And, and so we are just brutally honest. I've got a little fridge in here that is leaking. It's one of those little tiny travel fridges. And I keep looking because I hear water dripping, and that little fridge is just thawing out, I guess. And, it's dripping over here. So I need to probably put something to catch that. Looks like we finally had some more questions come through. Sean says, does Bosch use a muffler on the liquid line like other brands do? We are getting some harmonic noise inside the house at certain frequencies in heat mode only. I don't remember, Sean, to be completely honest with you. And I have a Bosch in my own house. But I will tell you that there is a dip switch that I remember when I took the class years ago, and I don't remember which one it is off the top of my head, but call your local pro. And the class I took, they said, hey, there are some homeowners with hearing aids that will pick up a slight pitch noise frequency, as you call it here, and they'll pick it up when no one else can hear it, and it'll drive them nuts. And you have to flip one of the dip switches to make it stop making that higher pitch noise. So I wonder if that might help you, Sean. I don't know. But the other thing is, I don't know how new your system is, but if it's older, it's starting to get a little age, make sure it's being maintained properly, and maybe that noise will go away if you get a good cleaning and get that coil clean so the airflow. Mississippi pot roast looks great with the peppers. Yes, it's the peppers. That's the magic. And you might think crazy. It just does. Gary, Indian cuisine, marsala, and brought our own bottle of red wine and glasses, which is permitted. Nice little hole in the wall place. Nice. I think you and I would get along really well, Gary. I love good Indian food. I used to live in Richmond, and I didn't know Indian food. Like, I didn't know what this dish was, or I didn't even know what naan was at the time. And for those of you that don't know, it's their bread is basically what it is. And I would call this little Indian place that delivered, and I would say, hey, I have $50, which back then was more than it is now, right? $50 today, you might only get like 2 things. But back then I would be like, hey, I have $50. That's my budget. And I just want you to deliver me $50 worth of good food. You just mix it up. And he would bring me all this stuff, and I would chow down like a king for that night. And half the stuff I didn't even know what I was eating. But I just loved it. And that made me fall in love with Indian food. Arch says, I found the local HVAC companies were pretty close in price, but the one sent from HD was way out of line. Interesting. And that may not be Home Depot's fault. That could be the company just, I don't know. But it could be Home Depot's fault too, because they do add markup, Do you install tankless boilers also? We do not. I live in Virginia. Well, I don't know. I guess up in the mountains, it probably gets pretty cold. But down here, we're lucky to see, I don't know. I say this reluctantly because last year we did have a string of I don't know, about 2 to 3 weeks where it was like super, super cold, at least for our area. But up until that point, for the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years, I would say most years we were lucky to see, a handful of days below 30 degrees. Down in the teens would be very extreme, where we live. So mostly heat pumps where I live. There's other stuff too. There are boilers, but it's mostly heat pumps. Gary says pot roast sounds great. However, I'm not even going to try to say that, but he basically eats vegetables, seafood, fish, and cheese. Nice. I still think we would get along great as far as the Indian food. Good thing refrigeration to fix that leak. This little fridge, it's not a normal fridge, so it does it have a compressor? If it has a compressor, there's no fans or anything like that. It just it's one of those little travel fridges that you could plug it into a cigarette lighter in your car if you wanted to. So it's not a lot to it, but it's got, it probably does have a little compressor in there, but it ain't much to it. And every now and then it'll leak. And I'm like, what's leaking? Brand new IDS 2.0, but thanks for the tip. We'll have to see which one that is. Yeah, I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, Sean, but yeah, hopefully you get that straight, pal. Michael said, I'm wanting to say it's dip switch 3 on the outdoor unit. And the only reason I say that is dip switch 4 is the one we usually will turn on for better dehumidification. And switches 1 and 2, I think, do nothing. So I wonder if it's dip switch 3 on the outdoor unit. Again, we're going to wrap up in just a moment, guys. So drop any good heating and air companies that out there. Drop them in the chat. Michael says, I have a tankless hot water tank, 199,000 BTU, and I'm getting an error message of not enough gas is going to the system, but when it works, we can smell gas outside. Get someone with a manometer on that thing, and make sure your gas pressures are right. Arch says tikka marsala or butter chicken are pretty tasty. That's the ones I usually go for too, Arch. So me, you, and Gary, man, we do Indian food one night. They dropped their price by almost $4,000 when I told them they were too high. Needless to say, they lost our trust. Wow. $4,000? I don't blame you, pal. I don't blame you at all. Do you have any experience with outdoor wood boilers or furnaces? I found these videos on a YouTube rabbit hole. I would say I have any experience from the sense that I have worked on them a lot, but growing up, one of my best friends had where I grew up in the mountains of Virginia, there's a lot of wood heat, in fact, my parents used a wood stove, but this particular friend, they had a furnace, an actual furnace, that forced air furnace, but it burned wood, believe it or not. And I always thought that was just the coolest thing. And so that's the extent of my experience with them. Do you sell propane furnaces? Yes. Yep. We sell and install them. So anyway, it ended up popping off a little bit right here at the end. I know, Gary, you weren't here at the beginning. We tried a new segment tonight. So you guys that weren't here at the beginning, check out that new segment that we're calling Crazy Clips. I've got more clips that we're going to show in the future on more shows. And so that's a new segment that we're going to be doing every week as well, in addition to some of the other segments that we typically do. So those of you that join us every week, that right there, heart to you. Appreciate your support. And you guys that join us from time, on the regular. Arch says, do you install wood burning fireplace inserts? We do not. At Griffin Air, we pretty much do mostly heat pumps. We do some other things too. We do some mini splits, and we do some other things, but it's mostly, I would say 90%, if not more, of what we do is heat pumps, repairing them and installing them. So that's kind of our thing. When we first started, in fact, I still have one customer that has an oil burning furnace. But when we first started, I did some oil. I did some oil boilers and things like that. But I got away from it mostly because most homeowners don't take care of their stuff. And it was just a lot, telling them that they need to get their chimney inspected, and they would fight me and say I'm just trying to take advantage of them, which I don't even inspect chimneys, so I don't know how I was trying to take advantage of anyone. But it just got to be too much, and I had a friend that told me, he's like, I only do heat pumps. Yeah, we do. Ryan says no dual fuel. Yeah, we do dual fuel. So we do heat pumps with furnaces all the time. But anyway, he was like, I don't touch oil. And I was like, okay, well then I'm done with oil too. And from that day forward, we still have one customer that we do oil for. And that's because we put his system in, and he only trusts us. And so other than that, we don't mess with it. Gary says, thanks for the crazy clip tip. I will back up the play bar, see what I missed. Have a good week, John. Yeah, check it out. It was a crazy. Not only is the segment called Crazy Clips, but I think tonight's clip actually was pretty crazy. A couple guys trying to get this gigantic heat pump system in the back of this tiny little car. It's pretty comical, actually. So anyway, guys, if you can't tell, I'm still a little under the weather. I've been fighting a sinus infection / bronchitis. I'm now going on week 5. But I did go to the doctor today, and they gave me a new medication. And so hopefully by next week, this crackly voice will be back to the soothing voice that you guys all know and love. Yeah, Arch says, have a good week. I will echo that. I will see you guys next Tuesday at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. If you don't know what that time is in your area code, just try that. Figure out what that is in your area code, but we will be here 8:30 Eastern and live answering heat and air questions, and with new segments, of course. So make it a great week. We'll see you then. Take care.